So let's move on to the next question, guys. In this question, we are given that the diagonal of a rectangle is 4 times longer than its short side, right? So the diagonal of the rectangle is 4 times longer, 4 inches longer than its shorter side, right? And we have to compare the perimeter and the value 8. Okay, so let's draw a rectangle, right? So tell me one thing, we are given that the diagonal of a rectangle is 4 inches longer than its shorter side. So let's say this is the length, right, of the rectangle, and this is the breadth of the rectangle, and this is the diagonal of the rectangle, right? I hope this makes complete sense, right? Okay, so now tell me one thing. We are given that the diagonal of the rectangle is 4 inches longer than the shorter side. So what is the shorter side over here? The shorter side is B. Out of L and B, B is the shorter side, which is the breadth, right? So the diagonal is 4 inches longer than the shorter side, which means the diagonal is how much? The diagonal is B plus 4. I hope this makes complete sense, right? The diagonal is 4 inches longer than the shorter side, so B plus 4 becomes a diagonal, right? Perfect. Now we have to calculate perimeter, right? So what is the perimeter of a rectangle? The perimeter of a rectangle is 2L plus B, right? So what is the perimeter? The perimeter in a rectangle is how much? 2L plus B. I hope this is also pretty easy, right? Okay, so we are concerned with L plus B, right? So we have to find L plus B. If we find L plus B, we will be easily able to determine a relationship, right? Now tell me one thing, guys. If you see in this rectangle, right, we know that in this triangle, we know in a triangle, the sum of two sides is always greater than the third side, right? For example, if this is a triangle, if this is ABC, so we know A plus C is greater than B, or B plus C is greater than A, or A plus B is greater than C, right? So in a given triangle, the sum of two sides is always greater than the third side, right? Okay. So if you see in this triangle, one thing is for sure that B plus L will be greater than B plus 4, right? I mean, you can imagine that. Or, so, okay, B plus L will be greater than B plus 4, right? I hope this makes complete sense, right? But if you see it differently a little bit, this diagonal, right? Obviously, breadth can never be negative. Breadth will be something like 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 10, 15, 20, whatever, right? And this side will be 4 added to breadth, right? So that means this side, which is the diagonal, will always be what? Greater than 4, right? This diagonal will always be greater than 4, right? So tell me one thing, if this diagonal is always greater than 4, right? That means, for example, if this is D, right? The diagonal. So diagonal is what? Diagonal is equals to B plus 4, right? Which means diagonal will always be greater than 4, right? If diagonal is B plus 4, that means diagonal is definitely greater than 4 because B is positive, right? Because B is the breadth. So if you add anything to 4, obviously it becomes greater, which means diagonal is greater than 4, right? Perfect. Now tell me one thing. We also know that the sum of two sides of a triangle is greater than third side, right? So we can say that L plus B is greater than D, right? L plus B is greater than D. We can say this. But we also know that D is greater than 4. right? D is some value which is greater than 4. And we know L plus B is greater than D, right? This automatically means that L plus B will be greater than 4. I hope this makes sense, right? Because we know L plus B is greater than D and D is greater than 4, which means L plus B will be greater than 4, right? Perfect. Now we had to find the parameter which is twice of L plus B. Now tell me if L plus B is greater than 4. So 2 times of L plus B will be what? 2 into 4, which is 8. Right? If L plus B is greater than 4, so twice of L plus B will be greater than 8. And what is twice of L plus B? This is the parameter, which means parameter is greater than 8. Right? So the parameter is greater than 8. So we had this parameter over here. So the parameter is greater than 8, right? Which means the left hand side is greater than the right hand side, and that is why your answer becomes A. I hope this should be completely fine, right? Nothing complex over here. You just have to calmly solve the question. So what we did was that we assumed this is a rectangle, then we applied some triangle properties, and therefore we came up with the solution. I hope this should be absolutely clear.